So today, Horizon Forbidden West reviews went live, and they hit Metacritic. Everybody's talking about the game. For the record, I did not get a review code. I don't really care that much. I'm still going to play the game. I still have a collector's edition on the way because I'm a sucker. I enjoy these games. Of course, I would like to have reviewed it early, but beggars can't be choosers. And also, I understand it. Like just today, while we're filming this, I posted a video on the main channel called ABCDEFU PlayStation because they're censoring a horror game. Beside the point, I kind of get it why they might not consider me to be their biggest, I guess, sycophant. So I get it. Regardless, people who did get a review code put up their reviews today, and they're varied, but overall it's reviewing very, very well. Let's take a look. So right now it's sitting at an 89 out of 95 critic reviews. And for the record, this launches on the 18th. So this Friday, I guess? Yeah, Friday. So the one common thread, I kind of glazed through these. The common thread is that the game is freaking beautiful. It's fantastically put together. There's a lot of really impressive design, with the design of the dinosaurs being bigger and badder than people even thought could be possible. There's apparently a few surprises in the story with those monsters that's amazing and worth trying. But, you know, these 100 out of 100 reviews, you never really get anything juicy out of them. You got to look for the 80s and the 70s to figure out what made some of these people pull back their praise just a little bit. And in general, out of the reviews that don't give it flying colors but give it like a solid B+, are these reviews that mention a lot of bloat or filler, which is something that we see in a lot of games that try to just be the biggest, baddest thing ever, and then they fill it with crafting systems and RPG narrative discussion systems and all of this stuff, and they kind of lose sight of the simpler mechanics which they should have focused on. So like VG247, Horizon Forbidden West does a great job of building on the foundation that Zero Dawn laid out. Everything is more beautiful, the stakes are somehow higher, and the flirtations with BioWare style story ideas shows just how much a future this series has. The exploration and combat pillars of the game sing in harmony too. It's just a shame that there's so much sludgy filler amongst all that well-oiled machine killer. So this is in the full review. They say open world fatigue is real, of course. A wealth of errands are drab, and the writing outside of the main quest and main cast is questionable at best, off-putting at worst. But that's fine. Ooh, Leesky, thank you. 17 months in a row, that's ridiculous. Good God, I'm doing very well. Much better now that you're here. Oh, I said something sweet. Continuing. So off-putting it worse, but that's fine because you're only doing some of those missions to get more experience, right? The meat of this game is in working through the story and wrapping up loose ends that fray off from the main narrative thread in the process. It's just a shame about the go here. Sorry, I can't read. It's just a shame about the go here, do this trudge that forms a large percentage of the non-story experience. About 10 hours in, you'll unlock a sort of hub, a home for Aloy where allies and friends gather, and it reminds me of Mass Effect in the Normandy. You can grab what are effectively loyalty missions from the ragtag team that assembles over the course of the game. And here lies the game's heart, really. The end of the world is fast approaching, but going off on one to find a replacement arm for your ex-warrior mate resounds a lot more than stopping some sort of synthetic plague. Ooh, Brain PL. Thank you, my friend. That's awesome. Thank you. Another sub. You guys are killing it today. Again, You're wonderful. Guerrilla uses this base to really throw you out into the world too and highlight the bits it really wants you to see, and rightly so, because the map is bloody massive. Remember that place you ran through in this story mission? The developer asks when you ask your newly found friend why they're so glum. Go back there and really get to know it. We think you'll enjoy it. Suddenly, my quest to halt the terraforming threat that's about to bring the world to its knees evaporates, and I'm in a village, ogling at the local flora and trying to find a way to make someone I've known for about 25 minutes a bit less sad. Credit to you, Guerrilla, you've sidetracked me again, and I'm enjoying it. This time. This is something I cannot stand in games that want you to take their narratives seriously. Okay? This sort of, they hint at it here, and I'm sure this is what they're trying to get at. But suddenly, my quest to halt the terraforming threat that's about to bring the world to its knees evaporates, and I'm in the village ogling at local flora. They want you to take the story seriously. They set this whole thing up for you to be like, holy crap, the world's ending. I need to do something about it, and quickly. And then they try to divert you constantly and take it less seriously. It's like in Fallout 4, your son's been kidnapped, your wife murdered. You have to do something about it. You have to save your son. So get out there and find him. But also you can like build a shack. And if you want to collect bobbleheads, you can do that. And, you know, you could listen to the radio station, maybe. But, you know, you should still take your son missing very seriously. And it's very emotional. But, you know, if you want to go and like wander around, that'd be cool. You know, that double standard where they don't seem to know what they really want you to do drives me up the wall. Because if you want the player to take the main story seriously, you need to let that main story carry through all of the side content. It's why in a game like The Witcher 3, it actually worked really well, because the idea that Ciri was missing and you had to find Ciri, well, this is Momo gone. This is where I'm like tying it together. I think the way The Witcher did it worked well, because with Ciri being missing, you need to look for set clues. But a lot of the time, and I know this because Nikki just played through the game for the first time and I watched her do a lot of it, they will send you to an area of the map and say, explore, like figure out some clues, meet some people. And that's open-ended enough that you can go into that area, maybe Oxenford, and you can explore a little bit. You can talk to some strangers, do some side quests before you stumble into somebody who knows something about Ciri, instead of just a series of main missions that go along this linear path. And then anytime you do something off the side, it's completely irrelevant, right? It's frustrating that so many games can't seem to figure this out, where they have this insanely intense main story threat, not just to the character, but to the world. But, you know, you can screw around and do whatever the hell you want. There are portions of The Witcher 3, it doesn't do it perfectly, for the record, portions of The Witcher 3 where you know where you need to go, and you can just dilly-dally and go do your, like, whatever you want. There, if I recall correctly, there are alterations to the ending. Like if you have a scheduled meeting with somebody like Kira Metz, and you don't show up to the meeting within a set number of in-game days, then she like leaves and says, well, you never came, so I didn't bother meeting. And you basically fail that portion of the quest. So there's things like that you can do to not punish the player for screwing around in the world, but to give consequence, because consequence and punishment are not the same thing. It's just to say that if the story should be taken seriously, there should be consequences to taking it seriously, and to taking it like it's nothing and just kind of floating through the main story. So it's just frustrating to see that they fall into the same trap that so many of these modern games are falling into in Horizon Forbidden West, at least if this review is to be taken at face value. It helps that this is one of the best looking games I've ever played too. Being tossed from the top of the map to its leftmost extreme is bearable if I'm going from frozen mountains to lush west coast beaches. Hey, maybe I'll stop off at that jungle village en route to mop up the combat pit quest. I think as I set out on what will no doubt be a 3-hour detour. An hour of that is in photo mode as I try to capture Aloy's face as she gets clotheslined off her mountain to the snow and some electrical fanged panther thing comes diving at her. I find, is it just me, or does this person's writing, it's really confusing. Like they do this in like their own thoughts randomly where they're writing the review, and then they write these chunks where they're like, this is what was going on in my brain. Like, I don't care. Just tell me about the game, you know? Anyway, the combat itself is pumping. The new additions, Valor Surges, you can deploy like special moves that give you stat buffs, new melee options that make hand-to-hand less of a drag, new weapons to break up the rhythm are all okay, but they're nothing worth writing home about. This series is always going to be about the rhythm of trapping, sneaking, and shooting from range. Every single encounter, except a few very specific story battles, give you the option of starting from stealth, and rightly so, because that's what this game is all about. The Decima Engine's obsession with growing long grass everywhere gives you plenty of opportunity to get close to machines, target their weak points, and go about disassembling them with precision bow shots, explosive javelins, boomerang discs, plasma-loaded crossbow bolts, acid bombs, and whatever other deadly ephemera Aloy has managed to cram into her suspiciously concealed pouches. This is something I've actually heard through most of these reviews, is that the game apparently really excels in stealth, which is interesting because I think most people played the first game in a much more combative, confrontational way where they just went running and gunning, right? So to hear many of these reviews mention stealth is interesting to me because it's not just this person at VG247. GameStop, I believe, mentioned it as well, with their full review. I don't know. I don't really want to dig through all these, but I opened a good number of them and most of them mentioned it. The Guardian mentions stealth as well. I think IGN did as well. It's just a common thread that like apparently the level design is very well done here. And the level design has been crafted in a way where they want to encourage stealth, at least for the beginning of most encounters. So you like start the mission stealthily. And if it devolves into combat, so be it. It devolves into combat. But you know, you can start stealthy. It's kind of like the Death Stranding combat system where you start everything with stealth, but if it goes bad, it's going to turn into a full-on brawl, right? That's kind of what it seems like they're doing here. Yeah, apparently the story is very self-indulgent. I've seen that in a few of these. They just like, by self-indulgent, I mean the review just, or by self-indulgent, I just mean that in the story, like you'll be talking to somebody and instead of just getting to the point of saying what you need to say, they'll spend 3 to 5 minutes just ranting about lore in the world. And it's fine, like if you're really into that, but a lot of the time that exposition is great if it's optional and you don't have to listen to it for hours on end. You know, if you want to learn more about these worlds that they've crafted, great. The information is there, but we're not going to assume everybody wants to know the ins and outs of the religious practices of this small Nora tribe. You know, they can take their time, engage with it if they want, but you don't have to if you don't want to. But I mean, all told, the reviews are very, very positive. It's sitting at an 89 out of 100. I mean, maybe are there any new? No, okay, it's still 89. So that's pretty solid. I mean, I don't think anybody was going to guess that this was going to be a flop or there was going to be a major issue with the game that would prevent it from selling well. It's going to sell great. And I think the original, what did the original Horizon Zero Dawn, it also got an 89. So It's following in the footsteps. I always thought, apparently it's not going to load. I always thought that Horizon had a ton of potential. If you remember like the original videos I made on Zero Dawn, I felt like they set up a lot of stuff. They did a lot well, but they just didn't stick the landing. It was basically a huge proof of concept. The monsters were really interesting. The combat I felt was pretty bland and could be fleshed out. Like so many of the monsters just ended up feeling like arrow sponges. Yes, there were weak points that you could target, but on higher difficulties, if you didn't have pretty much everything crafted that you would need, then the whole combat encounter was just a trudge, and it would take an hour and a half to kill one gigantic monster when like it really shouldn't have. And I know you can say, well, that's just realistic that it would take you that long. Well, I mean, maybe, but that doesn't mean it's fun in a game. Like just because something's realistic doesn't make it fun. There are games which are hyper realistic and they appeal to their own audiences. But for something like this, I don't know if that's what they should be going for. And I don't think that's what they would say they were going for as well. So to see that they fix some stuff and some stuff is done really well is good, but it's frustrating to see that they fall prey to some of these open world tropes that so many games fall into, where it's go here, fetch this, bring it back. Oh, this random person you just met needs something to feel better because they're sad about something. So stop saving the world and go pick them some flowers. You know, I get it. You don't have to take these worlds super seriously. You don't have to. I've got something on my shirt. It's like a piece of paper or something. Oh. You don't have to take these worlds super seriously. If you are a player who can just go through the motions, have a good time, I'm kind of envious of you, but not everybody is like that. And if you want to take the game like super seriously, challenge yourself with it, then that's great. But this is like there's a way to do this where you aren't doing everything like linearly, but you can craft the story with consequence so that you can screw around if you want and not take the end of the world seriously, but there will be a consequence for doing so. So in this case, and for like Forbidden West, if you want to go and help random villagers with side quests that don't have any real impact on the main story, great. You can gain XP from that. You'll level up. But in turn, the final combat encounters are going to be way worse and way more difficult because you didn't like solve the threat initially, right? It's sort of the opposite of something like Breath of the Wild, where if you screw around, you'll be rewarded at the last encounter. With this, you would be punished for not taking the threat of the end of the world seriously. The final combat encounter would be significantly harder. And that's something that could be communicated with something as simple as just a line of dialogue. Right before the final encounter, we took too long. If we hadn't done so much stuff for the villagers and we had taken the threat on head first initially, they wouldn't have been as difficult to defeat. Boom. Problem solved. There's consequence for screwing around. That's all I'm asking for. That's all I want. I'm not asking for like a hyper linear game. I'm just asking that there's some sort of consequence, you know? That's all I'm saying. But all told, Forbidden West looks like it's reviewing very well. Looks like it's a keeper, something that you should get. Reviews are good. What more can we say? It's kind of what we were all hoping for. So I'm happy to report, according to most people, it is worth getting.